For just under 40 years, the Steve Harris-helmed juggernaut known as Iron Maiden have gone on to be a brand in and of itself, often being one of the first things that comes to mind whenever anyone thinks of heavy metal. Their back catalogue is one of the most impressive of all time, and this bunch of rockers, as intelligent and culturally clued in as they always are, found the time to sneak in some little in-jokes, references and treats for hardcore fans. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 hidden details you never noticed in Iron Maiden songs. Number 8. Idi Amin's Still Life. 1983's Peace of Mind dropped only 12 months after what many consider to be Iron Maiden's magnum opus, the brilliantly controversial Number of the Beast. During Peace of Mind's conception, writing and recording, the band was facing many protests from religious groups, especially those in the USA who hastily branded them as Satanists for their imagery, sound and lyrics. While this would ultimately die down after Peace of Mind and especially the beloved Power Slave, Maiden responded to their early 80s controversy with the track Still Life. While the song itself is totally unconnected to Number of the Beast's ultimately polarized reception amongst religious groups, it comes with a backmasked spoken introduction provided by then new drummer Nico McBrain. When played backwards, this Still Life introduction has a drunken McBrain doing an impression of the Ugandan dictator Idi Amin. He states, "Don't meddle with things you don't understand," followed by a big ol' burp. The drummer has since stated that this was directed at those who had labelled the band as satanic, when in hindsight that clearly was never the case. Number 7. If Standard Tuning Should Fail. In the 90s, for extreme bands to experiment with the tunings of their guitars was almost a given, pioneered by acts like Machine Head and Slayer, and later Gojira and Meshuggah. As lengthy and intricate as some of Maiden's compositions could get, you'd assume that they're also part of the downtuned club. However, it wasn't until 2015 and the lauded Book of Souls double album that the band finally fiddled with their tuning pegs, laying out opening track If Eternity Should Fail in drop D. This tuning is where you lower the thicker top E string down, creating thicker overall sounds and meatier chords. According to frontman Bruce Dickinson, this came much to the joy of lead guitarist Adrian Smith, who already loved lower tunings and had experimented with them during his days with Dickinson's solo band. As Bruce put it only took us 2 centuries to discover drop D. Number 6. Back in the Village is the spiritual sequel to The Prisoner. The Number of the Beast and Power Slave are connected in that they're probably Iron Maiden's 2 strongest albums. However, they're also conjoined via The Prisoner. A third track on the Beast record, it's a little known fact that one of the deeper cuts on Power Slave, Back in the Village, is the distant cousin of that song. Both tracks are based off the classic British TV show The Prisoner, which ran from 1967 to 1968. The series told of an ex-spy who was kidnapped and held against their will in a mysterious seaside village, where he's given the label of Number 6. This is referenced through the dialogue at the opening of The Prisoner, which was taken directly from the show. While The Prisoner is very much the stronger song of the two, with its semi-regular presence in the Maiden setlist reaffirming that sentiment, it's still interesting to draw connections between 2 seemingly unrelated tracks from Maiden's golden age. Number 5. Charlotte the Harlot. Much like with The Prisoner and Back in the Village, this entry in the list serves to connect Iron Maiden songs that for the most part appear to have nothing in common. However, while The Prisoner as a concept connects 2 tracks, it's the character of Charlotte the Harlot that's the common thread between 4 Maiden songs. This character was first introduced in the eponymous Iron Maiden track Charlotte the Harlot in 1980, written by songwriter and long-serving rhythm guitarist Dave Murray. He was apparently basing it on a true story, and Charlotte would go on to be the main focus of 1982's 22 Acacia Avenue, 1990's Hooks in You, and finally 1992's From Here to Eternity. What has since been affectionately referred to as the Charlotte Saga began as taking place in a very realistic world, with Charlotte initially being an upper-class yet naive prostitute at 22 Acacia Avenue. Soon though, the subject matter transcended into the realm of fantasy. Fear of the Dark's From Here to Eternity concludes the character's story by having her be taken to hell by a motorcycle riding Satan. Depending on the song, Charlotte's involvement can range from her being the central character in the lyrics to her just getting a mention by name. Either way, this so-called Charlotte Saga is an interesting little micro-series connecting a handful of Maiden songs. Number 4. The Sound of an Airship Dying. The closing track of the Book of Souls, the 18-minute opus Empire of the Clouds, is one of the most complex and expertly crafted in all of Iron Maiden's discography. Composed entirely by frontman Bruce Dickinson, the track is one that narrates the events of one day, the 5th of October 1930, one which saw the airship R101, at time the biggest Zeppelin ever built, crashing on its maiden voyage to France, killing 48 people in the process. While you'll catch on to the subject matter just through listening, what may surprise Maiden fans is the lengths the band went to, especially Dickinson and drummer Nico McBrain, to create something as massive and visceral as this composition. For the airship crash itself, one of the most intriguing elements is that Nico ran a violin bow across the edge of a gong in order to recreate the intense terror of the R101's collision with the ground. When Bruce first heard the sound, he declared, "That's it! That's the sound of an airship dying." Number 3. Freddie Mercury and Fear is the Key. This is a darker entry than most, but a fascinating talking point nonetheless. As many already know, legendary Queen frontman Freddie Mercury tragically passed away in November 1991, succumbing to the then mysterious and panic-inducing AIDS virus at just 45 years old. A year after his passing, Maiden's Fear of the Dark came out. A definite step up after the irredeemably panned No Prayer for the Dying, it was an album driven by a monstrous title track. Fear is the Key, though, is where the album and Mercury find common ground. The track was inspired by the singer's passing and, in its lyrics, deals with the topic of a sexual relationship that has been injected with a sense of unease and fear as a result of the HIV/AIDS scare. It's an underrated track based on an insanely talented musician and definitely deserves to be heard by as many Maiden fans as possible. Number 2. H.G. Wells and Jack the Ripper are both Caught Somewhere in Time. Another Maiden track based on a film, Caught Somewhere in Time, gets its own slot on this list purely because of how bizarre its source material is. Being heavily based on the 1979 science fiction movie Time After Time, it centers on a fictionalized H.G. Wells possessing a fully functioning time machine that is then stolen by Jack the Ripper. Because of course it is. In the song though, this balmy flick comes through in a handful of places. The pre-chorus of Time is Always on My Side is a direct reference to time travel, while the second verse, Can I Tempt You, Come With Me, echoes Jack the Ripper's appeal to Wells to use his time machine for personal gain and to shed his morality. While Caught Somewhere in Time doesn't wholeheartedly capture the social commentary of Time After Time, it serves as a brilliant, appropriate opening to an album filled with sci-fi thematics and all-new synthesizers. Number 1. Iron Maiden's Quadruple Meaning. The final song on their self-titled debut, Iron Maiden perfectly summarizes the band's early game-changing aspirations through one now infamous refrain. The first meaning goes hand in hand with the following lyric: "Wherever you are, Iron Maiden's gonna get ya, no matter how far." However, the song also has fun with its title, drawing reference to a second meaning, the medieval torture device from which the band took their name. This is well known to most fans. What's lesser talked about is the song's writer Steve Harris musing that the term Iron Maiden could be used more literally to refer to a cold-hearted woman. Hence lyrics like "Won't you come into my room, I wanna show you all my wares." Even better, a fourth meaning ties into the band really not being a fan of Margaret Thatcher, infamously having mascot Eddie kill her on the cover of their 7-inch single for Sanctuary. Thatcher would later get her quote-unquote revenge on Eddie by attempting to shoot him in the artwork for Women in Uniform. What was one of Thatcher's nicknames though? The Iron Lady. While the Thatcher interpretation doesn't seem to have ever been confirmed by the band wholeheartedly, combining everything that we have here, it's difficult to imagine them not taking the chance to slander the then Prime Minister one more time. And those are just a handful of hidden details you never noticed in Iron Maiden songs. Let me know your favourites down in the comments below, and maybe you have some suggestions of your own. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture Music, and I'll catch you soon.